Hello and welcome back to Nolan Financial Radio. My name is Chris McKinney from Nolan Financial Partners. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 719-210-4242 or visit us online at our website, nolanfinancialpartners.com. And while at our website, check out the radio page. You can look at our past shows and subscribe to our program on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and I think there's some more. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions or to set up a face-to-face or virtual meeting. So, retirees and near retirees, listen up. There's a bit of good news coming for Social Security. COLA is set to rise in 2023, and so the Social Security Administration recently made the announcement it's going to jump up to 8.7% due to the cost of living adjustment. So that's called COLA. That bump will go into effect 2023. And that's the largest COLA bump since 1981. It's nearly 3% larger than last year's 5.9% increase. So before we discuss this exciting Social Security news, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Tony Shore, who is definitely not getting an 8.7% raise next year, even though he's doing such a great job.
Oh, come on now. Come on. Oh, man. You had to hit me with that. Now, you said earlier, you just said to me, you sent me a message, hey, we're going to talk about COLA. So I thought. See, I was mistaken. I thought we were going to do the whole debate, the Pepsi Cola wars with Pepsi, Coke, RC. Remember RC Cola? You ever drink that?
I grew up drinking RC Cola because I couldn't always afford the Coke.
Yeah.
Because RC was about half the price of the individual cans.
Yes.
And so you could get an RC for like 15 cents.
Yeah, RC Cola was. Well, you're showing your age now. If you could buy pop for, you sound like my great grandfather. Pop was 15 cents.
Oh yeah,
15 cents.
So we'd run around the construction sites and pick up pennies and returnable bottles and cans, and so we could go to the 7-Eleven and get
get an RC Cola.
Get and Coke.
Yeah, RC still exists every year at the state fair here in Minnesota. At the Minnesota State Fair, there's it's the only cheap place to buy pop at the whole state fair. It's really expensive. It's like $5 for a Coke, right? At the state fair. But RC Cola is like $1.
Wow.
And they have a little trailer, RC Cola, and it's the only cheap place to buy pop at the fair. Yeah,
I've never heard of anybody doing that at a fair.
Yeah, so it's awesome. Anyway, and it's good and it's fresh, like it's on tap. It's not in cans. It's like it's fountain pop and it tastes really good. So anyway, we got off track there. But Social Security, the raise. I wish I was getting a raise. How about 8.5%? How about that?
Nope. Not for me.
I'll tell you what, Chris, my agent will be in touch with Tara. Let's put it that
way. She's got her big nope on.
Yeah, big nope. Yeah, the big nope. Yeah, I know. You know that nope well, too, don't you?
Oh yeah. Nope, we're not doing that.
Nope. Well, but in all seriousness, 8.7% increase is really, you said good news. It's great news. It's a relief for a lot of retaillees out there, Chris. Inflation has been so bad. They really had to do something. And I mean, with last year's, 5 point whatever it was, and this year's 8.7, hopefully that will help a bit with the rising costs.
Yeah, the inflation has really hit a lot of people really hard, especially for people that are still working and getting their Social Security. They're still paying for gas and all those things. They still have to get to work. They still have to do things. So inflation's hit a lot of people really hard.
Yeah, it has been bad. I mean, I think it dropped a little bit, but I mean, we're at over 9% inflation, and that's the government's calculation. So some stuff has doubled in price. That's more than 9%. When I go to the grocery store and it's twice as much as it was than last year, then to me, inflation is more than 9%.
Yeah, right.
I don't understand how they come up with that number, but they're not shopping at the same grocery store I am.
No, they're not. The price of eggs has gone up. It's yeah. And then my milk hasn't gone up that much for some reason here. I think it's milk. I think there's regional.
Yes, milk spiked bad here for a period, and then it's leveled off a little bit, but it got really expensive here for a brief period. But eggs are still expensive. Meat has come down a little bit, but it's still really expensive. Certain items at the grocery store, cereal is really, any grain product has gone up.
Yep,
typically. So
I noticed that.
Yeah, inflation is a killer, and I'm glad
I bought bargain brand cereal last time. I was like $5 for a box of cereal.
Yeah, that's insane, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. So I don't know if it makes us sound old, but I remember paying less than $2 a box for cereal. All the time, and then it just it's crept up. But this last year, everything's exponentially increased. But because of inflation, I'm glad they have this built in, the COLA, or it stands for cost of living adjustment, into Social Security. And these last two bumps are big news because over the last 10, 20 years, we haven't seen increases in the COLA. In fact, we had a couple of years where there was no increase at all for inflation.
Yeah, if you look back to after the Great Recession back in 2010, 2011.
2008, 9, yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't have, back then we had basically nothing or zero.
Yes. Yeah.
But then we didn't have, things didn't go up, weren't going up in price.
Right. So what do you have for us on this cost of living adjustment?
Well, so I was going to discuss kind of what the averages were for most people, so people can get a sense of what they might be seeing in their paycheck. So the payments are they go out on December 30th is the first payment that will see that rise, and the average rise is going to be about $140. So that's a huge jump for an individual. So if you look at that, the average person was getting $1,657 in 2022. That will jump up to $1,801 for 2023.
Right, so and $140 a month is nothing to sneeze at, right?
No, not especially for people on fixed incomes and trying to make ends meet with everything. It'll be a big help. Now, if you're a couple, those benefits are going to go up a lot more, obviously. So it could be as much as $240 a month on average. If you're looking at somebody that got the maximum Social Security benefit at their full retirement age, that will be an increase of like $291. So
wow.
Almost $300. That's something you can go to the movies on that.
If you don't buy the large popcorn, you can go to the movies.
Right.
That thing gets more and more expensive all the time. You got to make money somehow. People aren't going to movies anymore. So, that's interesting, and the numbers really do bear out there, and hopefully, a lot of our listeners obviously will view that as good news. Right. So, but yes. I know, but as with every single discussion we have and every topic you bring to me, Chris, taxes play a part in this, right? You got to look at the tax situation.
Yeah, that's kind of the drawback. So anybody that's working is going to see some additional taxes on their Social Security income if they're making more than $147,000 because they've raised the threshold for what's taxable up to $160,200. So basically that's an additional $291 if you make more than $160,000 in Social Security tax. So there's, so that, if you're making $160,000, at $291 isn't going to kill you. But it's just something to be aware of. So when you do your taxes, that you're going to get that hit. Most people that were listening, their retirement age is 67. So if you're born after 1960, your full retirement age is 67. And so one of the things they've done is they raised the earning limit for workers younger than that full retirement age, so that the first $21,240 is not taxable. So there's some help there a little bit for that limit to be raised. So the earning limit for people who reach their full retirement age in 2023 will be bumped up to 56,520. That's kind of complicated. So you really need to see your financial advisor if you're working and you're collecting Social Security, to make sure you're doing it the right way, or you're thinking about starting Social Security before your full retirement age. There's a lot of financial considerations that go into that. It can be complicated.
And you have to look at survivor and spousal benefits, how filing early will affect that and affect your spouse or your partner.
Yeah, that gets even more complicated, because when you file, affects your spousal benefit. So if your spouse files, then that affects your benefit from them. If you're going to collect on a spouse, Tara makes so much more money than I do, so I got to make sure she files at the right time.
That's right. Well, and I'm glad you went over it, though. A lot of people out there, I know you get a lot of questions about Social Security and how you can help people with that. And a lot of our listeners have questions about Social Security. And one of them, I don't know if I really want to know this, but I know I'm going to ask it anyway, because I'm almost afraid of the answer, actually. But how does the government, how do they calculate COLA? How do they come up with it?
So COLA is calculated using the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. So it's not exactly the same as the Urban Dwellers Consumer Price Index, which is used to report inflation. So it's different than what they use to report inflation, which why it's different, I don't know, but it is different.
You'd think the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, it would be the CPI, but it's different when they calculate the government's official inflation numbers and the numbers that they use for cost of living adjustments in Social Security. Thank you, government.
Thank you, government. Right. So this COLA is also used for anybody on a military pension or a federal pension, because those pensions get COLAs. And so this is a very important number that they use. They want to make sure that they're not using something that they can't kind of tweak to make sure it works with our tax situation, right? So I think that's one of the reasons they use this, to make sure it's working with everything else that we're doing. So if prices don't increase, if they go down, the COLA will typically be zero. So we've talked about that a little bit. Some of you may recall that, back in 2010, 2011, the economy was so beat up from the 2000s that we didn't get a COLA increase. So there wasn't a real increase thanks to oil until 2016. So there was, for a long
oil prices
time,
crashed, when oil prices crash so low, that brought the price of everything down. So they didn't need a cost of living adjustment, because everything we have is shipped usually using gas or oil or manufactured. People don't realize, hey, plastics, oil-based.
Oil-based.
Everything.
Everything we touch, has plastic in it, it seems like.
Yeah.
So oil affects not just transportation, but the goods themselves. So that really kept COLAs down, but so it's kind of put us. I think it's kind of put us behind a little bit. But I think these COLA that we're getting now will help get us back to some kind of earning power with our Social Security dollars, right?
Yeah. I think
so
they
we
should
just need
pass a
that.
law where I think they should pass a law where there's a base COLA every year. Like it can never go below that point. So people can automatically expect a cost of living adjustment. Like you
There
build
is,
when
it's zero.
Right. I understand that. I understand
But
that.
if we have deflation,
For me.
if we have deflation,
Nope,
and your
it
cost of
doesn't
living
work
goes
that way.
down,
Right, but
it's
you
not
need to, but you when you and Tara do a retirement income plan for someone, you build
Yes.
in 5% a year for inflation, right?
Yeah.
They should have the minimum COLA should be like 3%, right? There should be a 3% floor, and then a ceiling, and then it should always be in that range. And so at least every year I'm going to get this increase, right?
Right.
And so, but usually the years where there's just a small increase, like 2 or 3%, Medicare costs increase the exact same amount. So your check amount that you get in the mail doesn't change because they're taking that out for Medicare.
Hey, guess what? Medicare is going down next year.
I know
in
that
a lot of situations. Yeah.
Yeah, that rarely if ever happens. So that's amazing.
It is. I was going to do a story on Medicare and how it's going down, but it's really complicated and it's going down in different ways.
Sure.
So everybody should check how it's going down so they know.
Yeah. If they have questions, they can call you and Tara about what we're about Social Security, about Medicare. This is something that you incorporate into these retirement plans that you help people with. So, if you're in your 50s or older, you need to sit down with a financial services professional and really make sure you understand what's going on, because there are a lot of changes, especially if you're planning on retiring in the next few years. I mean, that's
right.
Or are already in retirement. Those two classes of people, it's urgent for them to make sure it changes every year. But going into 2023, we're seeing bigger and more unusual changes than we ever have that could affect people. And you want to maximize your Social Security, minimize your tax burden, maximize your benefits, and minimize your premiums. So all those things are things that you can help our listeners with. But in fact, that was my next question. How do you and Tara help people with the Social Security process?
So we have actually some software. So we can take your information, we put it into the software, and the software spits out what it thinks would be the best time. Now,
it does over 20,000 calculations.
It's an amazing piece of software.
Maximization report.
You can look at every year, and then it'll tell you by the month when to start pulling your Social Security. Now, we don't always go with that because sometimes people have other factors that are hard to put into the software. But a lot of times we go exactly with that or something close to it. It really gives us a great idea and a great
and it's based on their personal information too. It's not this isn't a report that's already printed you hand to everyone. Everybody's situation is different, so their time to file is different. So if your uncle at the family gathering says, oh, you got to take Social Security at 62 because that's as early as you can take it and you're going to get more money, that don't listen to the neighbors or your coworker in the cube next to you at work. You need to have that report run for yourself and talk to a professional. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody that knows what they're talking about and how Social Security affects your Medicare, and then how your other incomes affects your Medicare. Single filers have big issues with Medicare costs. So we help those single filers fix some of their Medicare costs so that they are not paying too much. And Social Security goes into that. And if you build a financial plan that you can have all those dials, right? So you can
Right.
turn things up and turn things down as far as your income. Then
Personal adjustments.
you can really extend your dollars a lot further that way.
Yeah, and that's the goal here, right? I mean,
That's right.
That's what this is all about, and get a plan for that in action.
Yes.
So obviously, you know, we've talked a lot about Social Security on past shows. Tara's talked about it as well.
Right.
And when you file, I mean, there's early filing at 62, but if
Right.
you file then, your premium is great, or your benefit is greatly reduced, right? If you file early at 62.
Yeah, it's a lot smaller. So for a lot of people, it's not the best thing to do. If you know you're not going to live very long, then 62 might be the right time. But who knows how long they're going to live? Most
Right.
people are going to live well into their 80s. If you're going to live well into your 80s, then 62 may not be the right time.
Right.
It reduces a lot. And so what it also does is it reduces the spousal benefit that would go to your spouse if you're the higher wage earner uh, while you're working. So you really need to have that right size uh, for your Social Security. So full retirement age is 66 for everybody born after 1960. If you're born between 55 and 59, then it ranges from 66 and 2 months to 66 and 10 months. So full retirement age is a very important number because if you work before your full retirement age, then your Social Security income can be reduced. It can be taxed all the way down to zero if you're making too much money before your full retirement age and you're receiving your Social Security. And now you've locked in your Social Security before your full retirement age, and it's at a lower rate when you could have waited. So you always want to make sure that you're taking your Social Security at the right time.
Right.
The other
And a lot of people, like you say, they're working longer or working into
Yes.
their 60s or 70s. And a lot of people make the mistake, well, I'm going to work and take Social Security, but they don't realize that they're going to take that benefit back away if you make too much money. So
That's right.
you might want to wait if you're still working, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's good. And when to file is probably the most important question people could ask about
Yes.
Social Security. That's to figure out which time is right for your particular situation is the most important thing you'll do. But there are so many facets to Social Security: survivor benefits, spousal benefits, divorce benefits. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
there's a lot there. So before we move on, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they want that Social Security maximization report run for them?
Yeah, so they can reach us at 719-210-4242. It'll be a quick meeting. We'll get your information. We'll send off for the Social Security report, and then we'll meet with you again. We'll go through it so that you understand it. And this is a complimentary service that we offer for people. So give us a call at 719-210-4242 to receive that complimentary Social Security consultation. And we can help you make your decisions based on your specific situation. So it's always best to be prepared for meetings by bringing in that information so we can give you the best advice possible. Think about a doctor. He does not diagnose you unless he looks at all your stuff, looks at your lab work, checks your heart, checks your temperature, checks your weight, those things to make sure that they're doing the right things for you, what your symptoms are. We do the same kind of diagnosis. So we go in depth. We look at what you're doing. The number that to call is 719-210-4242. Go out to our website. You can check us out there, nolanfinancialpartners.com.
All right. That sounds great. And we'll give that information again in just a few minutes at the end of the show. But first, I want to ask you about the Fed has been really the Social Security cost of living adjustment, the COLA, is what we've been talking about today, and that's tied to recent inflation. That's the reason it's so high this year. It's at 8.7. That's the biggest increase since 1981. You mentioned,
right?
That's a long time. I mean, that's the biggest increase since 81. That's quite a few years ago. I was just a young pup in 81. So, and much smaller. Too. Throw that out there. People don't realize if they're viewing this. I want to note, Chris, that the camera adds 100 pounds. You realize, right? I just want everyone
my head.
I just want everyone out there to know the camera adds 100 pounds. So, but with the cost of a living, really, this is because of inflation, and the Fed has been trying to stave off inflation or slow down our economy, so the inflation rates will drop. And we've seen a little bit of a drop now. It looks like it might actually be starting to happen
which is ahead of schedule, right? Because usually those dials they have on our economy take 18 months to start to work. Well, they started working even quicker. So that's great that inflation is slowing down.
Yeah, that is a good thing. I know that it looks like they'll probably keep raising rates a little bit into the beginning of next year, but then they said probably stop or ease off.
Right.
Yeah, at least that's what they're indicating. I know you have like probably a weekly call with Powell, the Fed chair, right? He calls you. You give him, you and Tara, Tara.
He calls in. Sometimes we answer.
Tara's like, we're hiking right now. Decline. So,
I'm walking in the guard of the gods. I got bad reception. Can't talk now.
You're like, figure it out, Powell. No, no, I'm just kidding. But Social Security ties into all of this, and it is so important because it's really the foundation of retirement plans. No matter how much or how little money you have, it's the one check is going to be there every month in retirement, so you want to maximize it. And I think that's the key here. Now, we are almost out of time, so just let our listeners know again how they can maximize their Social Security. How do they get that report?
So they call us at 719-210-4242. Come in and we'll get your information. We'll get started on that report. Takes a little bit to get the calculator to work. And so we have to make a second meeting for that. But we'll get that into the software. It's about a 12-page report. So there's a lot of information to go over. There's a lot of details that you need to understand before you start your Social Security, that report, it can give us some guidance on. So give us a call at 719-210-4242.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. And this has been a great show today. Listeners, that does it for today's episode of Nolan Financial Radio with our host, Chris McKinney.
Join us again next time at Nolan Financial Radio.